Hey everyone. Thank you for hanging out with us again today. Today is a very juicy topic. It's about um, how to know if men, we're just gonna cut right into it, how to know if a man is interested in you. And we have a call here, so he's gonna demystify a lot of fluff that is out there. And also, we need to just cut to the chase with the excuses we give sometimes to men. So, a call, he's going to tell us if a man is really interested in you and he's not shopping around or he's not in it for the entertainment during the dating phases. What are the signs, especially the communication styles? Because when I coach women, and myself included, it's always this thing about when to communicate, like especially when you don't know the guy, you're not sure, you went out on a date, you don't know exactly if he's interested, if he's not interested. You went out on a great date but he did not text the next day. You went out on a fantastic date but he did not ask you out again. So when to communicate back and when to hold back. So we're just gonna hopefully demystify all these things so it can be clear. So,
All right. So a couple things. The one thing I have to say is that this question is also relevant to men. And what I mean by that is, although a lot of the signs and signals that I'm going to explain are things for women to recognize. However, there are also there's a lot of confusion with men too as to, so for instance, if a guy really likes a woman, how do you come across as not being too aggressive or overbearing? Other words, I think women want to know you're interested, but don't be pushy about it. Or don't be pathetic and kind of, I'll use the word simp, like a simp, meaning that, you're just like, oh, I love you so much. Da, 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 da. You don't even know the person. Like, in other words, know when to back off with the compliments and things of that nature. So what is too much and what is too little? So, and how does, in terms of, if you're a woman, how do you interpret these various signals? Obviously, if a guy is showing a ton of affection, if he's very, let's say you had one date and then the next day he's like, oh, I love you and this thing and that thing. Well, he's being a little bit too aggressive. And anyway, there's inherent warning signs with a guy who's throwing too much at you too quickly. However, there's always this question a lot of guys have, which is, after a date, like, how many days do I wait to contact the woman again? So, and this is something a woman could really learn in terms of like what a man, if he's actually interested in dating or he's just simply wanting to fill his time and get some entertainment. So, for instance, if you have one date and then he waits like a week to contact you again, he's just wanting most likely to fill in time, meaning he wants entertainment. It doesn't mean he doesn't. I mean, dating still may be a thing, but he's not terribly serious, perhaps. And maybe that's just the case after the first date. Maybe after date two, he will contact you in a shorter period of time. But if this turns out to be a consistent thing where he's waiting a week, it's because he's kind of just wanting someone to spend time with, and maybe he enjoys your company, but maybe he's not particularly serious about a relationship. So you need to be, obviously, you should be very aware of the sort of time frames in between dates and how long he takes to contact you. Generally speaking, I think after a first date, the assumption here is there's no sex. Okay. So first date, there's no sex. I would assume he would contact you within 2 days. Within 2 days saying, hey, I really enjoy the time we spent together, blah, blah, blah. Okay, that indicates he's interested in progressing toward some sort of dating situation with the potential of a relationship. Because he's making it known without being too aggressive about it. So the other thing is, this is kind of relative to the sex piece, is if the guy is trying to get laid on the first date, in all likelihood, he's not interested in a relationship, right? He's interested in sex. And again, that's not, none of this is, and I know there's people watching this who are like, oh, you're making generalizations. That's not true. It mostly is true. And the reason is because a guy, unless the guy's a moron, generally speaking, like they know that if you're pushing for sex on the first date, that it's not one of I don't know how to say this. He kind of, it's a bit like your delay gratification to me is the point of a lot of dating, right? It's to allow the buildup to happen. It's allow the heat to build up. And the whole thing is that a guy who, in my opinion, who's interested in a relationship is going to be happy with what he can get. Yeah. She held my hand, great gesture, right? Yeah. She touches me when we're talking, or, maybe even got a little kiss on the first date. Great. Yeah. But to continue pushing for more, just to me, that doesn't indicate that the guy is serious. It indicates he's trying to get laid. And again, I know there's guys out there like, whoa, no, this is just how guys are. No, that's not true, right? Guys can actually operate with restraint. I created an entire program, this is a good time to me to bring that up. I created an entire program that teaches men about how to have restraint in a lot of ways and to cultivate the sexual energy. There's a link down below the video if you want to find out a little about sexual energy cultivation. And then Amira, she also has a program, which is linked down below the video, which deals with individual wellness practices and how those wellness practices eventually, in some ways, essentially help the individual shine from the inside out so that when they connect in a relationship, they can do it in a clear and conscious manner. So for either one of our programs, you can check out the links down below the video. But now to continue, something else that you may want to kind of look at if you're a woman is if, let's say, date 2, date 3, date 4. I don't want to get stuck on like, oh, we're on the first date. The first date's always, there's lots of question marks always on first dates. But let's say you're into like date 3. The guy has been pretty good about it for the prior 2 dates, right? He's been good about it. Like maybe he contacted you after the, a day or 2 after the first date, and he kind of kept the pattern after the second date. But let's say the third date, then things are going to get physical potentially. And first off, I would encourage men not to expect sex, right? Don't expect sex. For me, and again, I use myself as kind of I'm a lame example in that regard, but I don't mind waiting 2 or 3 months. For me, it's not the big deal. I prefer the buildup. I may be an anomaly in that regard, but the reality is that if a guy is interested, he will wait. He will be patient. So let's say date 3 came around. Well, that's, that could be only within a couple of weeks and the guy's already expecting sex. It's a little bit aggressive, a little bit pushy. But let's say you're like, all right, cool. I'm a liberated lady. I don't mind jumping into, the sexual thing early. Fine. So the one thing is you want to look out for is, okay, during the sexual experience itself, right? To me, this is when people give up their true intentions, right? So people give up their true intentions in moments of vulnerability. So one is, how can you tell the man is willing to be open and vulnerable, meaning he's willing to be open and vulnerable in a relationship? You'll find that during the sexual component when to me, sex is an extreme level of intimacy, right? And for whatever reason in the world today, not the whole world, but we'll say like the Western culture, the whole thing around intimacy is that it's been dumbed down. There's this dumbing down of intimacy where there's this expectation that sex somehow isn't intimate. It's just like, whoa, everyone should be fucking and doing this. Excuse me. Everyone should be having sex and doing this and that and everything else. And, and again, the reality is that it's not, sex is like such a deep connecting thing. And if you're in the middle of a sexual experience and he doesn't make eye contact with you, good indication that there's an issue, meaning he's not really interested in diving deep, or perhaps there's an insecurity issue, whatever. I don't, you can kind of weigh it out however you wish. The other thing, does he seem present during the sexual experience, or does he seem like he's in his head? Is he fantasizing? Is he present with what he's doing? Like all these are expressions of how capable the man is of being intimate, but also on some level, it's also an expression of how interested he is in developing something with depth. And we have to keep in mind what a relationship is on a fundamental level, which is time spent, right? A relationship, you can have a relationship with anything. It simply means time spent. So I spend time with a person. The idea is that I want that time spent to develop into something and not just topical conversations. So that's why I'm talking about intimacy, because the intimacy is when you get past the topical conversation, because you can have great conversations with strangers. You can have amazing conversations with all sorts of manner of people. That is not a way to judge whether somebody is correct for you or not. Yeah. And so, oh yeah.
Can I interrupt you for a sec? Because this is an important piece here. So, two things. First, because communication is a big key and a big indicator. And women tend to analyze a lot. So let's say you had a great first date, and I'm just gonna capitalize on both first date and after sex. So if the conversation, like you had a fantastic first date, very promising, and then when you got to the conversation piece, like after, like he reached out, thank you, we had a great day, thanks for that. But then you feel like he's a bit standoffish or aloof, or he's on the cold side compared to the fantastic date you had. So what is what does that tell? Does that tell anything?
Oh, so let me see if I rephrase the question, see if I'm getting what you're asking. So are you saying it like the first date, you seem to have a great bond, a great connection. It seemed to work out really well. Second date, he seems aloof.
No, I'm saying the conversation after the first date. So the conversation after the first date, like he texts, but his texts is very kind of like he seemed to be cold on the text, like aloof. And also after the sex, let's say you had sex after the third or fourth date, which is it could be kind of early for the woman, but most women will put out because the pace became so fast. And now most women would feel like fourth, third date is a good time to explore physically, whether you're compatible or not. So when it comes to the communication piece after the first sex, what do women should really, what are the indicators that shows that this guy is not doesn't just want a hit and a run, hit and run kind of thing?
So when you're talking after the first time you guys have sex, are you talking about immediately after, like, or within an hour after, or are you talking more like the day or two after?
I'm talking like a day or two after. Like,
okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to answer, even though you're talking about the day or two after, I'm going to answer immediately after as well as the day or two after. So immediately after sex, if a guy withdraws, it's fine. It doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
And that's, well, true and false. So it's true if he ejaculated, right? So if the man ejaculated, there may be a withdrawal. Because there's a loss of energy. And once a guy discharges the energy, the sort of, how do I say, there's a depressurization that happens. So there can be a disconnect from the heart space. Whereas during the sexual experience, when the energy is high, there's a pressurization upward where the man could potentially connect through the heart space. That is, if he stays out of his head. Okay. So now the answer to the question, like a day or two after the sex, in the sort of the nature of the communication, if the guy is interested, he should, to me, it should be like, hey, I really enjoyed what we did the other night. Hey, it should be like very complimentary, in terms of like, and the other thing I would say is he should call you, right? You should be able to hear his voice. If he's sending text messages, you can't interpret anything from a text message or email or anything of that nature, even over the phone to some degree when you're having a conversation, because there's something about just technology there's a detachment that comes along with technology, and it also leaves too much open to interpretation. So if the guy calls you and he's willing to let his voice be heard, he's more serious. If the guy's sending texts, Although he may be like, oh, I'm a Gen Z or millennial type, and so this is just how we communicate. Well, you should know you shouldn't communicate like that, because it leaves too many question marks. There's too much openness there. So, other words, it's too easy to interpret a text as being aloof or distant. And that may be true, and it may not be true, just because that's the nature of texting. But if it's obvious that the guy's coming across aloof after sex, or the woman had to reach out and initiate the contact, he's wishy-washy, right? Like he may be on board, may not be on board. In all likelihood, if the woman has to reach out, no, he's not interested. Or he may be interested for sexual reasons, or may want, like every guy is kind of like, oh, I want the follow-up, right? Like I want the opportunity to have sex again. Whatever. Dudes usually want the follow-up. So maybe they're somewhat responsive. But again, if after the sex, if the guy reaches out within a day or two, ideally if he calls, or he's like, hey, through text, hey, would you want to get together? In other words, he's giving you action words, right? So it has to be action words, not just like, oh, how you doing? How you doing doesn't mean anything. Hey, would you like to get together again? If that's the text, that indicates clear interest. If he's like, how you doing? And then it just goes back and forth and there's no action words included, then to me, he's marginally interested. So
and
does that kind of
he
make
might
sense?
be shopping around. Yeah, for sure. It makes perfect sense. I 100% totally agree with what you said, and I love what you said about the phone calls. I find it almost I don't know, almost obsolete these days that people call, but I believe that this is the way, because really it kind of diminishes diminishes the opportunity for misinterpretation, because exactly with texts it's super cold, it does not give an indication of anything. So and this is for the women out there: stop giving excuses to men. This is coming from a man. And stop giving excuses and stop doubting yourself. If a man is interested, he will do what it takes to make you feel that he's interested. Like it's not going to be super vague, in my opinion. And yeah, I believe that I personally don't reach out after a physical encounter. I wait for the man, because and that's a personal preference. It doesn't come naturally to me. It just doesn't. It's not out of disempowering women and saying, okay, you should wait and you should play hard to get. It's not about that, but it just doesn't come natural to me that I should reach out after a physical encounter.
Well, I think it's interesting that in modern times, where it's like, there's a lot of this BS that, like traditional values and roles are gone. No, they're still ingrained. The fact of the matter is that this is a traditional role that still applies. And the reason this traditional role exists is because it's describing something, what I consider something innate. So the fact is that the guy is inherently the aggressor, right? Inherently, on all levels of life, the man is inherently the aggressor.
And
I don't mean that.
The pursuer. The pursuer.
Exactly.
Don't take that role away from men. Don't take that role away from him.
Well, yeah. I mean, and also to call it toxic, right? This idea of toxic masculinity, and he's aggressive. And no, that's the misuse of the aggression. This word aggression is not a negative thing. In fact, we have an entire planet in astrology, the planet Mars, which embodies that. In every woman and every man on the face of the planet has a Mars in their chart. So it is representative of some aspect of human nature. It's just that men have a little bit more of the aggression than women do in general. And the way you can tell this, and this is men, you got a penis, right? And the penis points. It points. It perfectly describes a man's natural drive. It perfectly describes the directionality of flow of energy. So men, it's only toxic is if you think you're supposed to wait. That, in my opinion, is toxicity. It's toxicity to yourself. It's toxicity to repress your aggression. You want to operate with that aggression, in my opinion, from a place of awareness and consciousness. And again, you have to cultivate that, right? Because we don't have a society and a culture that helps you cultivate aggression. We have law enforcement that says, oh, you've been too aggressive, naughty, naughty. But again, individually, we have to recognize our aggression and then to operate through it consciously, which requires inner development. And again, our program's down below the video, great for inner development. And the whole point here is that the genitalia is biological, and it also expresses the energetic flow. Women are going to be more receptive, so hence they're going to wait to receive, your contact, your information. Are you interested or not? Guys, you need to be direct and clear. Be clear. Not too direct, because a lot of times that's off-putting, and it also can come across as like too pushy.
Needy.
But again, think about the timing of what you're communicating. Also, think about your presence during an intimate experience. And you want to make sure that the signals you're giving are very clear in that regard. Hey, you wait after the date, you wait a day or two, that's reasonable. And then during the sex, make sure you're engaged. Make sure you're making eye contact. And this is a good way to also tell if she's interested in anything deeper too, because if she doesn't want to make eye contact with you, you know what the deal is. So
I just want to capitalize. I want to say one more thing to actually piggyback on what you said, which is, why is it legit to use this aggression in pursuing your work, your personal project, your personal goals at the gym, for instance? You use that same energy, you use that same aggression, you use that same drive. You have to, this is food for thought, guys. This is food for thought. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. It's the same, because it's this testosterone, okay? It's this testosterone, it's this hormone, it's this drive that makes you pursue things, that makes you pursue success in life in general. It's the same energy. It's just how you direct it. Don't let anybody fool you into something else. I lived in Scandinavia, I lived in Canada, and it's really downplaying the role of men and how they should not objectify women and all this BS, in my opinion, because it's emasculating men. Men are so scared to give women compliments, to take first steps, to lead, to be the masculine they are. They are being masculine in the gym with machines, but they cannot be masculine with women whom they have interest in, because the society telling them that this is objectifying women and this is not respectful for women. Bullshit. So many Western women go to other Middle Eastern cultures because they crave attention from men. They crave that drive. They crave that aggression, in the sense of not being aggressive or pushy, but I'm talking about the moderate attention. Like, they crave attention. They crave to feel like they are noticed, they are seen. So yeah, it's just food for thought. Men, don't let anybody fool you with this false, I don't know, propaganda, and emasculate and castrate you from your natural drive, because you use the same drive. Why is it legit? And I'll leave this question for you to ponder on. Like, why is it legit to do this when it comes to your personal project, whether you're an entrepreneur or a startup founder, but it's not legit to do that if you are interested in a woman? So yeah.
Yep. I felt one last thing I want to say really quickly is that, and this is well, so this is going to sound bad. If a guy's a good manipulator, right? So if he's a good manipulator, he'll listen to this video and he'll actually take some of these pointers and he'll actually be able to get his sex and also, get to manipulate her in the ways he wants. Because the reality is that, everything as we've laid it out, in a lot of ways, like I said, these are the ways in which a man expresses whether or not he's genuinely interested. And if he's a manipulative a-hole, he'll also do these things. And so for that, that's where a woman needs to like hone into her intuition. Yes. Okay. Because there's lots of manipulative a-holes.
Yeah.
We have politics is a great example of manipulative a-holes that we end up voting for. And we think they're telling us the truth, even though we all know deep down inside they're lying to us. So the reality is that a woman's really got to tap into the feeling.
Yes.
And that's the ultimate, that's the ultimate telltale sign is if her gut or her instincts or intuition says, dude's lying to me, you got to listen. So, yeah.
One more thing. If you're not ready for sex or intimacy after the 3rd date, 4th date, 10th date, don't do it for his sake. Just do it when you're ready to do it.
Yep.
That's it. Great. Great conversation. I think we demystified a lot of things for women today because there are a lot of like with the dating apps and everything out there, it's very hard to tell which is which. So thank you so much for kind of clarifying all these things, and communication specifically is really kind of like a deal breaker here. So so thanks so much for all this, and thank you guys for hanging out with us, and see you on our next podcast.
Thank you all.
Appreciate you. Namaste. Bye.
Namaste.